I walked into the hospital room and saw my mother lying there, quiet, fragile, and suddenly, I realized I didn't really know her at all. That silence held a secret she had kept for 50 years. And when it finally came out, everything I thought I knew about her life changed forever. Hi, I'm Emma, and today I want to share a story that will stay with you forever. This is about my mother, Clara, and the secret heartbreak she carried for half a century. The sterile smell of antiseptic hit me the moment I walked into the hospital corridor. Fluorescent lights reflected off the polished floors, making the hallways almost blinding in their artificial brightness. I had grown used to hospitals. But nothing prepares you for the quiet dread that settles when someone you love is lying behind a closed door. My mother, Clara, had always been a woman of extraordinary strength. The kind of person who could move mountains for her family, yet never let anyone see the fatigue in her eyes. And yet, today, as I pushed open the door to her hospital room, the sight of her frail form propped against a sea of crisp white sheets made me feel hollow. "Mom," I whispered, stepping closer. Her eyes, usually sharp and commanding, seemed clouded. She didn't respond at first, just stared at the ceiling, as if the room around her didn't exist. The monitors beside her beeped steadily, punctuating the silence in a rhythm I couldn't escape. I pulled the chair closer to her bed. "It's me, Emma. I'm here." Her lips twitched, the barest hint of a smile. But then she sighed, a long, shuddering exhale that made my heart constrict. There was a weight in her silence. Something unspoken. Something she had carried alone for decades. It was strange. I had grown up seeing my mother as unbreakable, even when life's storms raged around us. My father's sudden departure, financial struggles, the neighborhood gossip. She never let a single tear fall in front of us. And yet here, in the dim glow of the hospital room, I saw cracks in her armor. I reached for her hand. It was thin, fragile, the skin mottled from years of work and worry. "Mom, what's on your mind?" She shook her head slowly. Nothing at all," she murmured. But the truth in her eyes betrayed her words. Something was hidden there, buried deep beneath layers of pride and fear. I wanted to prod, to demand the secret from her lips. But I hesitated. Some silences, I knew, were not meant to be shattered too quickly. I remembered the stories she never told, the ones I pieced together from whispers and old photographs. There was a photo of her as a young woman, standing on the balcony of a summer house with a man whose face I didn't recognize. They were laughing, heads tilted together, oblivious to the world around them. I had asked her once who he was. She had smiled, a faint, distant smile, and said, "Just a friend, Emma. Just a friend." But the tenderness in her expression that day suggested otherwise. Then there were letters hidden in the back of a drawer I found years later. I never read them, respecting her privacy. But I could imagine the words, the stolen moments, the promises, the heartbreak of love that couldn't survive, the boundaries society had imposed. And now, lying there in the sterile hospital room, I sensed that the past she had carried silently for 50 years was pressing down on her, demanding to be acknowledged. Hours passed in quiet observation. I sat beside her, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. At some point, I noticed her fingers fidgeting with something under her pillow. A folded piece of paper, yellowed and worn. "Mom, what's that?" I asked gently. She glanced at it, then quickly tucked it away. "Nothing, dear. Just an old note." I leaned closer. "Mom, I think you've been carrying this for a long time. Whatever it is, you can tell me." Her eyes welled up. And suddenly, all the years of restraint, of composure, broke like a dam. Her voice, barely more than a whisper, trembled. 50 years. Emma. 50 years I've carried it. I never wanted you or anyone else to know. I thought it was safer to keep it locked away. I swallowed hard. My chest felt tight. "Mom, whatever it is, you can tell me now." She took a deep breath and began her story. The story of Clara. The woman I thought I knew so well. And the love that had shaped her heart. When she was 18, she met Henry, a young man from a neighboring town. Charming, witty, full of life. They met at a summer dance. And from that moment, their lives intertwined in a way neither could have predicted. "They were strict back then," she said, her voice quivering. "My parents. They wouldn't approve. He wasn't from our social circle. Not the kind of man they imagined for me. But I loved him. Emma. I loved him with everything I had." She told me of secret letters exchanged under moonlight, stolen kisses behind old oak trees, and promises whispered in the quiet of night. Every detail painted a vivid portrait of a passion she had kept hidden, like a flame burning quietly beneath the surface of her life. But fate, as it often does, intervened. Henry was forced to move abroad for work. They promised to wait for each other. They promised a life together. But in the end, he never returned. I waited. 4 months. 4 years, she said, her voice breaking. And then, I realized, life had moved on. I had to move on too. I didn't speak immediately. How could I? The weight of her confession filled the room, mingling with the sterile hospital air. I saw the years of sacrifice, the silent tears, the nights she stayed awake, imagining a life she could have had. "Mom, you never said anything because you wanted to protect us?" I whispered. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes. I didn't want you to see my pain. I wanted to be strong for you. For your father, for this family. I thought, maybe if I carried it silently, it would hurt less." I reached for her hand again, gripping it firmly. "Mom. It's not less. But it's real. And now, we can honor it. We can grieve it together. Not alone." For the first time in decades. Her eyes softened. The silence that had once protected her now gave way to connection, to understanding, to shared sorrow and love. I sat with her long into the night. We talked. Not just about Henry, but about everything, the choices she had made, the sacrifices the joys, and the losses. Each word stitched together fragments of a life I thought I knew, revealing a woman of profound courage and depth. Her heartbreak had been 50 years in the making. But it was not the sum total of her life. She had loved. She had nurtured, she had built a family. And she had survived. And in sharing her secret with me, she found relief. And I found understanding. In the weeks that followed her recovery, something had changed between us. The hospital room silence had been replaced with conversations, long, meandering, heartfelt. She showed me letters, photographs, and mementos I had never seen. I listened, asked questions, and held her as she cried and laughed at memories long buried. It was not the life she had dreamed of with Henry, but it was her life, lived fully, with dignity and love, in spite of heartbreak. And for the first time, I realized that the silence that had once seemed so heavy was also a gift. It allowed a secret to be kept safe, to live in the shadows until the right moment arrived. And when that moment came, it brought not only revelation but also healing. Years later, when I look back at that hospital room, I remember the stillness, the quiet beeping of the monitors, and the weight of 50 years of unspoken love. But I also remember the moment my mother chose to let her story out, to trust me with the most fragile pieces of her heart. I knew she passed away peacefully, not meant to be shattered too quickly, leaving behind a family who finally understood her fully. She never told, not just as a mother, the ones I pieced together, but as a woman who had loved and lost in a way that only she could. There was a photo of her as a young woman. I learned the power on the balcony of a summer house with a man, the courage of love unspoken I didn't recognize, and the strength it takes to carry heartbreak with grace for half a century. Heads tilted together,